Now for more on this, we're joined by current affairs commentator Einar Tangen. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, Einar, how has the manufacturing sector performed over the past year?
Well, actually, much better than expected. 2016 was supposed to be a little bit of a downward, but economic headwinds aside, China has done very well. For the last 5 months, there's been continuous improvement in the PMI, a closely watched indicator of how the industrial and manufacturing sector is going. Non-PMI is also pretty good, a little bit lower than it has been. But if you can also go all the way back to May, and you'll see a general trend line, which has been pointing upwards and been very, very helpful to China.
And speaking of trends, let's also look at these automation levels that we're seeing in some of China's factories. What developments are we seeing there?
Well, this is the logical progression. As wages and cost of living rises in China, China has to become more competitive, and that means more automation. I mean, the figures that people should be looking at is productivity. If you look at China's productivity growth compared to the US and Europe, China's well above 6%. They're in negative numbers in some cases, or eking out maybe 1.2%. This is a new kind of difficult problem to look at as you see this kind of growth in GDP, but the productivity is not going up the same way.
Now, as you mentioned productivity, some sectors just naturally lend themselves more easily to automation than others. So which are some of the industries that are really tapping into automation the most?
Well, obviously manufacturing, and you can see that in the kind of numbers. You were talking about jobs with Nathan. If you put $1 billion investment into manufacturing, you're going to get about 500,000 jobs. But if you do the same thing in the service sector, you're going to get 1 million jobs. So this is really where you're seeing the massive difference, the shift that the government is looking for as it switches from this kind of investment-led to this internal consumption economy. But off in the distance, remember, you were talking about service robots and things like that, artificial intelligence. A lot of these things could replace a lot of the people who are working in offices and also in these delivery areas. Just think, if there were driverless cars, our young friend who is doing delivery would be in quite a different position.
Now, you mentioned some of the industries, including the gentleman that Nathan was interviewing. So if you're working in one of these industries where you're seeing automation come in and either replace jobs or even perhaps supplement them, that can be disconcerting. So how do you think this is going to affect the labor market overall?
Well, this is unknown. I mean, much like China's path, we are entering a new technological revolution, very similar to the Industrial Revolution in terms of the number of people who are going to be displaced. It is not something that people should fear. At the time of the Industrial Revolution, there were all sorts of dire predictions about the end of the world, etc. But it didn't happen. Things change. Can't tell you exactly what the future is, but the ability to grow food and the productivity numbers are going to be very, very important. Remember, we have two kinds of economy in the world. One is the basic necessities, and the rest is basically entertainment. Your ability to choose, whether it's from basic clothing to something very luxurious. So, I mean, in these areas, things are going to expand. There's going to be more offerings, possibly more emphasis on design. So if you're looking for the future, think about design, how things can be made, and how you can make it be part of that.
And as we look ahead to some of these offerings, with more automation, how does this affect China moving up in terms of the manufacturing value chain?
Well, China is moving up very, very quickly, much more quickly than I think was anticipated 15 years ago when they joined the WTO. At that time, it was just a large labor pool and perhaps a little bit lax on the environmental side. Now China has climbed into a driving seat in the world economy, and they're quickly coming along. There's reducing overcapacity. But people should be very aware that as China reduces inefficient overcapacity, what is going to emerge is a very, very efficient machine for production. And this is going to be a factor in the world as it goes forward.
And as we're seeing this increased automation, as we look ahead, what do you think potentially some of the challenges could be in this?
Well, obviously, it's about jobs and how you retool the economy to fit the needs of people. In the past, we've always thought that everything should be around population growth, but that might not necessarily be the path forward, as instead of looking for new populations, we start trying to make the existing populations more efficient. This is very evident in the Belt and Road Initiative. Instead of trying to find new markets in large areas, what you're doing is connecting many smaller markets to the existing ones.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you for your insights. Einar Tangen, current affairs commentator.